Well, good morning. I'm privileged this morning to share a story that to me is very incredible. And I wasn't nervous before, but I am now. But I really hope that you guys are blessed by this story. God moves in such amazing ways. I'd like to kind of preface this story, first of all, by sharing a little bit about me. You guys probably know my wife pretty good, but I'm more of a private, introverted kind of a person. And so before all this happened, typically through my life, I've been someone who never made big moves without making big plans to make those big moves. I always wanted to make sure that I knew where we were going, what we were doing, and how we were going to do it. And I mean, when I was young and single and a little bit stupid, I was a little more carefree. But when I had a family, it was a different story. And so for me, this was a huge, huge journey. So we started off with, we moved down from Whitehorse, Yukon, to Nanaimo, and we lived in another lady's house. She was renting 2 rooms to us because we had to accommodate all of us, us and our boys and dog. And yeah, it was, so we were renting two rooms from this Chinese lady in Nanaimo while we looked for a house to buy. And that in itself was quite a journey. But we had some very particular ideas of what we wanted for our house.
When we moved down from the Yukon, we lived in a small house in the Yukon, a double-wide trailer. But we had a large living room, and we sometimes had home church in our living room, and people would come to church. And we would have Bible studies, and we would have fellowship in our home a lot. And that's important to me because I'm quite a social person. And when we moved to Nanaimo, it was in my prayers, Lord, we need a house that's going to accommodate a lot of people, because we need to be able to have worship in our home with other like believers. And so if you could give us a place that has a large living room and lots of space for lots of children. If I could show you the pictures of when we lived in Nanaimo, that's exactly what happened. And I'll let him share how that came about.
So I told our realtor, who happened to be a church member in Nanaimo there, I said, Ron, we're looking for a house, but we will not get into a bidding war. I said, we can't afford it. We need to buy something that we can afford. This is kind of the criteria that we're looking for. And so that was kind of a tall order for the poor realtor, because how many houses come out that are at a low cost, that are big, and have lots of rooms in them, and just kind of fit the bill? Well, we went and looked at a few houses, and they were just, no, this isn't going to work. And finally, he came to me one day, and he was excited. He goes, we have to go look at this house right now. We only have 24 hours to make an offer, and we have to do this now. So we went and looked at this house, and we were just excited. It was kind of in a busy part of town, like it was right on the road, main road. So that wasn't great, but the house was big. It kind of fit everything that we were kind of hoping for, and it was at a extremely reasonable price. And so we put in an offer, and the owner of the house was out on a sailboat. So it took a couple hours for him to get the message that he had received an offer, but he responded right away and said, sold. And so we were like, wow, this is awesome.
We had 19 people waiting to look behind us, and they were willing to bid up. But the owners were just like, sold. And so they never got a chance to get more money. But the Lord had his hand in that.
He did, absolutely. Yeah, I don't need that close, do I? Anyways, so we put in new windows in the house. Not an important detail other than they were old windows, and it was very noisy, and the new windows cut that noisy out. So we lived there for, let's see, about 3 years, pretty close. And one weekend, while we planned to go.
You forgot the COVID part.
Oh, yeah. Thank you for the reminder. So, of course, as we all know, COVID happened, and it happened quite mightily in Nanaimo. I was going to work still because the company I worked for had the emergency air service for the BC ambulance, and so we were basically required or needed to work because people still needed to get to the hospitals in Vancouver and such. So going to work, roads were absolutely empty. It was like a apocalyptic kind of a scene, you know, driving to town or driving to work, and absolutely nobody on the road. And so at that time, I don't know what happened here, but in Nanaimo, the church closed. The pastor said, nobody's coming into church except for the praise team and whoever's doing the sermon, because they were doing online thing. And people were coming to our church and saying, what's going on? We want to hear. And they were being turned away. And so we told the pastor.
I told the pastor, I said, Pastor, we can't do this. People are knocking on the church door. They're afraid. They want prayer. They want an explanation. They want to know what prophecy says. And when the pastor came to the door and heard a knock, he would say, I'm sorry, you can't come in. And so I told the pastor, this can't happen. And we've got to do something. We've got to reach these people. We can't let them flounder. And he says, I'm sorry, there's nothing I can do. The doors are closed. And so I told the pastor, I said, my address, send everybody my way. Send them to our house. I know they're not supposed to come to our house. But on Sabbath mornings, we opened our house for worship. And we had people filling up our living room every Sabbath. We would pull the blinds. People would park in the park. They would park up the street. We would park on the next street. And so it didn't look like there was a congregation of cars in our driveway, because it was in the city, everybody watches everybody. And, you know, when we would be invited out for lunch, they would say, come through the back door. Make sure you're not carrying your casserole so that they see you're coming with food and you're visiting. And so we would have to hide everything. We'd sneak in the back doors. This is how we lived. It was ridiculous. And when people came to our church, it had to, or our house, it had to be the same way. Come quietly, come one at a time, park here, park over there, park way over there, and walk. So this was the blessing of our new house, is we had a full house every Sabbath.
Yeah, we would have typically 20 to 30 people every Sabbath worshiping in our house. it was a real blessing, not just to us, but to everybody that was there, because it was, I'll just say I'm a big proponent of home churches. It's a much more intimate setting, and people are much more open to sharing, and it's an incredible experience. And it will come to that at some point, but having the blessings of a congregation to fellowship with and everything, that's a huge blessing too. So, yeah.
Another blessing was that I was running a little homeschool in the bottom basement of the church, learning center, like I am here. And when the church closed, that meant the school closed. And the parents were calling me and saying, where are we going to go with our children? What are we going to do? Who's going to teach? Because the thing is, they pulled them all out of school, but they packed them all into daycares. And that didn't make any sense. And so I said, well, I didn't know what COVID was, right? So I got down on my knees in my prayer closet. That's another thing I prayed for in this house, is, Lord, I want a prayer room just dedicated to praying. And this house came with this tiny little closet, but it had a big window in it, which is weird. But anyway, I turned it into, like, there was a desk, and I could put a chair in there, and I could pray in there. So I got down on my knees in my prayer room. And with tears in my eyes, I said, Lord, I've got all these children. Not lots, but I've got these children that I'm teaching. And the parents don't know what to do. And we've got to show them that God is in control. And I don't know what COVID is, but even the church members are saying, you can't take those kids, you'll die. And I was like, I don't care, Lord, so long as I'm doing your work. I will die doing what you asked me to do. And so I opened my Bible. I said, you've got to show me what is your will in my life for these children. And I opened the Bible, and I just went like this. And you know what the verse fell on? Suffer the little children to come unto me, and forbid them not, for such is the kingdom of heaven. And I started to bawl. I was like, thank you, Lord. COVID is nothing to you. You can take care of this. And thank you for this home. And so people were bringing their children in the mornings. They would bring their children in. We would shutter the windows again, and we would homeschool the children in our living room.
So this is kind of how it went until things kind of lightened up as far as restrictions. And I had heard about a beautiful bay on the northwest corner of the island, Vancouver Island, called San Joseph Bay. And if any of you are on the island for any reason whatsoever, please go there. It is a bit of a journey to get there. You got to follow some logging roads, but it's well marked, and it is gorgeous and very quiet, except for the waves, and hardly any people when we were there. It was marvelous. We went up there in May of 21. And I think it was, the second night? We were sitting there around the campfire, just enjoying the quiet and the crackle of the fire. And Julie says to me, what do you think about fixing up our house and selling it? And I was like, you know what? It's a funny thing you say that, because I've been really thinking about that for the last 3 or 4 months. And I think that God is telling us it's time to get out of the city. And so we made a plan. We pulled up our resources that we had available, and we did a major reno on the house. It took a couple of months to work through that, but we got it done. Harnishes?
Johan Harnish.
Johan Harnish came and helped us with our house. He's our journeyman carpenter, and so that was quite a blessing too. Have him come and help us out with some of our ideas. He was very patient, and he allowed us to help him work, and but it was all good. So then what happened? We knew we were going to sell, so we put the house on the market. We tried to go the cheapest way possible because we didn't want to spend a lot of money for realtor fees. I know our realtor probably felt slighted, but we were trying to get out of debt and do the best we could. So while we were selling or trying to sell the house, we went looking for property. And yeah.
We went all over BC from Prince George down, literally everywhere we could find piece of properties for sale on the map, including here. And I mean, we were in the Tules everywhere, and we couldn't find anything we could afford. We did see one property we could afford. It was in McLeese Lake. And we asked Ted if he would show us the way up there, and he did. And it was terrible. The loggers had come in and just decimated this beautiful piece of property, like clear cut and sticks. It was like pickup sticks. And it was all red because of all the dead pine needles and branches everywhere and stumps and rocks. Lovely piece of land. It had a nice pond on it. And I said to Art, well, that's about all we can afford. And he's like...
I was like, no way. This is a ton of work. And I knew who was going to have to do that work. And I wasn't excited about it. I was like, big rocks, clay, pine needle branches everywhere. Whew. I don't know about this one.
So our proposal was to the Lord, Lord, you save this place for us, because everything was going like hotcakes, like hotcakes. We couldn't put a bid in on anything before it was gone. I mean, there was nothing we could do. But this property was affordable. And we figured, well, it'd be a miracle, actually, if it didn't sell, because of the price, and everybody was making an exodus out of the cities, including ourselves. We had a ranch we could go to that we could house sit, and the Lord worked a miracle in allowing that to happen as well. Do you remember the story on that, of how that came about?
Yeah, go ahead and tell that
Okay.
part. Yeah.
We needed a place to go until we could find a place to call our own. And our house was going to be sold, and that meant we were going to be homeless. But we felt like we were doing what the Lord had asked us to do. And then a friend said, hey, there's this house online. They want a house sitter way out in Christian Valley. Maybe you could house sit that ranch. Babysit that ranch and their horses for the winter, and then you could buy a piece of property in the spring. So we called the people, and they're like, how on earth were you able to even see this advertisement? Because it's supposed to be only for members of a group of homesitters. There's only way you can see these houses for homesitting. And I said, I don't know, it was right online. And they said, no, it's not supposed to be. But there it was. And so they got it in their heads, even though they already had somebody who was going to house sit for them, they got it in their heads, well, I think the Lord is speaking. You're the people who are supposed to look after this house for us. So we had a place to go in Christian Valley on a beautiful ranch with horses, and that's what we were supposed to do for the winter while we waited the 6 months that we had proposed to the Lord.
So, just an interesting note, the owners of the house, she seemed to have Christian leanings, and he was actually a member of the Hells Angels and a professor in a university out in Ontario. So it was a pretty interesting couple. But so
Back to Nanaimo.
back to Nanaimo, we sold our house, and literally 4 days after we signed on the dotted line to sell the house, I got notice from my employer that if I didn't comply with the mandates that were requiring certain measures, that I was not going to be allowed to come to work anymore. They would not fire me. They would not lay me off. I just couldn't come to work. So,
And he wouldn't get paid.
and I would not get paid for not coming to work. So it was just like, okay, well, God had his hand there, because here we've sold our house after we felt impressed that we should do so. And 4 days after we sell the house, I now have only a few days left of work, and that's it. We're done. So what do we do? So we got everything together, and we tried to get prepared for a move, but we didn't quite have enough money to actually move because we hadn't actually sold the house yet.
Like we had signed on the dotted line to sell the house, but the money didn't come through until after the closing date, right? So we had to be out on the closing date, but we had zero money left to purchase or to rent a U-Haul to put our furniture in and to get out of there. We had no gas money, nothing left. And we were like, Lord, what are we going to do? I had one more Bible study to give before we had to be out of there. So I went to this lady's house. I had not told her anything, but I had told her we're leaving, we're moving. And she was an elderly lady. And she said, well, the Lord impressed me to give you this. And she handed me an envelope to say goodbye. And when I opened it, it was a check for $5,000.
Yeah, that gift from the Lord and from this very dear soul helped us out immensely. We were able to get our moving van, and we needed to move our stuff into a container because we didn't know we were living yet. And so everything we owned went into that container. Well, the day we were to start moving, I got sick. And so here, I thought it was just a flu at first, and that's the way it seemed. But so we're trying to move. I'm trying to move, literally just my body, and we're trying to load the moving van. And I could only work for a few minutes, and then I'd have to go lay down. I was wiped out. I would be there for 20 minutes, and then I would get up and I would struggle for another little bit, and then I'd go and lay down again. Well, my boys, I am so grateful for my young men, because they did actually most of the loading. It was more just me and Julie guiding, and she was not feeling well either, but we had to make this move. We had to get out. And so we managed to do that. We got on the ferry. We got over to Surrey where our container was. And then again, we're trying to move into the container out of the moving truck. And it was just horrible.
This is all within a 24-hour period. We're just moving everything and being very sick. Could hardly lift those boxes, and just stumbling into the container, stumbling into the U-Haul, stumbling into the... And the boys were all sick as well, but not
like
as
us.
bad.
Yeah, they fared pretty good.
Then we took a hotel
Yeah.
for the night. And that morning, in the middle of the night, I should say, I got up to go use the washroom, and I woke up with my face on the tile floor. And I was like, what on earth am I doing here? I was just laying face down on the floor when I woke up in the dark, and I was like, must be pretty sick. I don't know what. Anyway, so Art gets up the next morning and goes, okay, we gotta go. But we had phoned the people at the ranch where we were gonna go house sit, and they said, don't come, we don't want what you got, of course. It's COVID, right? So we were in trouble. We had no place to go.
Yeah. Well, we called Ted and Irene and asked them if we could camp there for a short while. And they said, absolutely, come on. And you guys can have a room here. And they took very good care of us. Very much appreciate them.
You.
What?
He took good care of you because I
They
didn't
took
go.
care of me and the boys.
I had to ask a friend in Vancouver. I said, I can't go. I just can't go. I can't drive. I mean, I already fainted on the floor. I don't know what I'm going to do when I'm driving for 7 hours. I just can't do it. And so I called a friend whose kids had lived in our home because they couldn't go back to Venezuela where their parents were. So they were stuck in Canada. And so we took their children in during COVID for a year, or 6 months, or some part of a year. And I had found a school for the kids to go to, but now this woman had lost her job because she wouldn't take the vaccine, and her husband had died of COVID, and now she was in Vancouver, and here we were in Vancouver, and I said, can I come to your house? I don't know this lady very well, but I can't drive, and I don't know where to go. So can I come to your house? And she said, please come and stay at my house until you get better. I was thinking a few days. Meanwhile, he went to Ted and Irene's.
Yeah, we were up there for a short while, and then I had to get the stuff. Like I got over being sick. The owners of the ranch said, okay, you're probably all right, come on. And so they were kind of anxious to get back to Ontario anyways. So they arranged to, how did that go? Anyways, we got down to the ranch, and that was about the time that we all heard about the atmospheric rivers in our weather, and everything started downpouring in the lower mainland.
Small detail he missed. On his way to the ranch, a deer jumped out and totaled our vehicle.
Oh yeah, small detail.
So now we were dependent on Ted's vehicle. Thankfully, he was so gracious to lend us his car, because now we were out of home and out of car.
Yeah, that was a very, very special gesture on their part, because we did borrow it for a while, and I felt bad about it, but as you know, ICBC, or hopefully you don't know, but I'm telling you, ICBC takes a while to take care of things. Anyways, so now we're separated. She's in Vancouver. I'm out at the ranch in Christian Valley, and I can't even go and see her if I wanted to.
Because all the roads were washed out.
And she's literally near death. And that was very difficult. So I'll let Julie, in a brief way, because I see our time is marching on, tell her abbreviated story.
Shortly after I got to this lady's house, she kept saying to me, do you have a headache? No. Do you have a fever? No. Basically, I didn't have any feeling at all. I just was kind of a lump on a log. But I was fast going down. And she kept asking me again, do you have a fever? Do you have a fever? No, I'm fine. And then she finally found the thermometer, and I had such a high fever, and she panicked. And she's like, you've got a really high fever. What are we going to do? See, her husband had also just died. And she's like, and I thought to myself, I don't want to die on this lady's doorstep because she's already been too traumatized. And I didn't really want to go to the hospital. But I said, call the ambulance. Let them bring me to the hospital. I can die there. So I went to, they called the ambulance. They came, they picked me up. They brought me out of bed. I'd been in bed for days. I had no shoes on, as just my socks. I had a little sleeveless T-shirt, no bra or anything underneath. I was just dragged out of bed and thrown into the hospital, and they took some blood and they took an x-ray and whatever. They put me in this little room that was just like a cement room with a half of an examination table, short little thing. And they gave me some oxygen and an IV. And that's where I sat for the next 9 hours. Nobody came to see me. They didn't ask if I was cold or wanted a blanket. They didn't offer me any food. They didn't offer me any water. They never checked on me at all. And I had to go out and fend for myself, dragging this empty IV pole to try to find some water or something. And that's how they treated me. And at the end of the day, I was so tired because I had no place, no bed, nothing. And I went to the nurse's station and I said, I was so frozen. I'm so cold. It's like a little prison in there. It's just like cement walls, and they got angry. So the doctor came right away. And she was very angry with me, and she said, so I've heard you've got friends who died from having the vaccine. And I said, well, yeah, I have had some that have heart attacks and blood clots and all those kinds of stuff. And she goes, well, that's not related. And I was like, I was too sick to care to argue. That's not my... And she goes, well, and about myocarditis. And I thought, oh, my goodness, I never brought up myocarditis. I don't know what you're talking about. And she pulled out the IV, and she pulled out the oxygen, and she said, get out of the hospital. Just get out. And so I said, how do I get out of here? And she said, follow the green line. So in my disheveled, homeless-looking state, I look like a bum, I shuffled out of the hospital, and the security man at the door, is pouring rain outside, and the security man at the door stopped me, and he said, ma'am, if you go out in the rain in your condition, you are going to die. And I said, I know. And I kept walking. And he said, no, ma'am, you come here. Sit on this chair. I'm going to go find you a blanket. And he found me a blanket, and he brought it to me, and I wrapped up in the blanket. And he says, you just get your phone out. And he started telling me everything what to do. Get your phone out. Do you have any friends, relatives? Call their number, get them to come, or get a taxi to bring you home. Okay, I was doing these things. So my friend came and got me with the taxi and brought me back to her house. And there I stayed for the next 3 weeks. But I tell you, the Lord had his hand over me. I called my mother on the phone. As I crawled back into bed, I called my mother and I said, Mom, I don't think I'm going to make it. I just wanted to tell you I love you. And my mom said to me, is your heart right with God? Is everything made right? And I said, it is. I'm okay. I'm ready to go. And I fell asleep. A little bit later, I don't know how much time went by, the phone rang, and I picked up the phone, and it was my mother on FaceTime, so I could see her. And in the back, behind her was a commercial building, and I said, Mom, where are you? She said, I'm in the airport. I said, Mom, you know you can't come here. You're on the wrong side of the border. She goes, I'm coming. I found the loophole and I'm coming. See, she had had COVID within a certain amount of days. She'd gotten over it. And if you had COVID within a certain amount of days, you could cross the border without having to do any testing or anything. You just had to quarantine when you got to this side. And so she was able to cross. And she came and quarantined with me. And she did hydrotherapy on me, hot and cold fomentations, hot foot baths, twice every day. The nurse, the lady who I was staying with was a nurse. She cooked beautiful vegan food for me. I couldn't eat it for the most many days, but and she and a doctor, Dr. Dreyer, had just come from India with some pockets full of ivermectin from India for people. And he also brought an oxygen concentrator because my oxygen levels were going down. They were at 70, and they shouldn't be. And so I was barely making it. I could hardly stand up. And anyway, long story short, Dr. Hoff got involved in also, and he took care of all the pharmaceuticals, drugs that needed to get my lungs up and running again. Dr. Dreyer took care of all the natural remedies. This nurse took care of all the food. My mother took care of all the hydrotherapy. I had my own spa and my own hospital. The Lord took very good care of me. For 6 weeks, and 3 weeks, I was on oxygen. But for 6 weeks, I was very, very sick. By the time my husband was able to come and see me, he had to help me walk. And I was so weak. I couldn't hardly stand on my own 2 feet. So that was a blessing, the Lord. And the thing that came to my mind over and over and over again was when Ellen White said, thinking about that doctor in the hospital who said, just get out. Ellen White said that someday we would have to find warmth from the coldness of others. And that kept coming to my mind. Find warmth from the coldness of others. This is what it means. Go ahead.
So while she was enjoying her spa, I was out at the ranch in pure misery because my wife is dying and I can't even go and see her. I can't get there. The roads are all closed. There's absolutely nothing I can do about this situation. And I was feeling pretty rough. So I gave Ted a call and I said, dude, I am not doing well. I said, what can I do? And he said, what you can do is sing some hymns of praise to the Lord and pray and sing some more. Well, I've never tried that before. And so I thought, okay, well, I have absolutely nothing to lose here because I'm stuck. I am absolutely helpless. And only by a miracle is my wife ever going to be saved here. And so I did. I spent some time singing praise hymns. All I had was the hymnal on my phone here because the people at the house didn't have a hymnal, obviously. And I spent some time praying, and I just came to the point where I had to leave it in God's hands. I told God, I said, you know what? It's up to you. I said, if you choose to allow her to die, then so be it. It's your call, Lord.
that wasn't God's will.
No. And I praise the Lord for that. But, you know, it was a very hard experience. But it was a good one.
The thing is, we had to learn to put everything we owned, we loved, and we cherished in God's hands. During this whole time, we had to surrender everything.
Yeah, it was truly a total surrender. I mean, even of someone who I love dearly. So it was like a day or two after that experience that Julie started to feel a little more strengthened. Her oxygen levels were starting to kind of hold instead of drop. And so in the end, it was all good. So now we've gone into, it's coming into March. The people have put their ranch up for sale, and they end up selling it. And we have to be out of there by the end of March. And we're like, what are we going to do? We still don't have a place to go to. We don't have any, we still have nothing. And Julie says, well, I wonder if...
This is while we're driving down the road away from the ranch.
Oh, yeah.
We're driving down the road going, okay, and where to now? Because we're hauling our trailer behind us of all of our belongings. Well, we had a container full of belongings in Surrey still, but we're just driving down the road going, and where to now? Because we don't own anything, and the ranch just sold out from under us. Now where do we go?
So Julie said, I wonder if that piece of property is for sale still. And I knew which one she was talking about. And I was like, oh, really? Do we have to go there? And I said, well, we did make that a matter of prayer. I hope it's sold, but all right. If you probably still have the guy's contact information.
Actually, I went online to look for this piece of property for the listing, and it was gone. And I was like, I can't find it anywhere. So I called the guy, because I had his number still on my phone, and I called the guy, and I said, do you still have that piece of property in McLeese Lake for sale? And he's like, oh, yeah, it's for sale. And I said, but I can't find the listing anywhere. He says, oh, you know, people wouldn't even come and look at it. So I got so tired of that I just took it off the market. Okay, well, that's what we'd asked for. If the Lord wants us here, he'll save it, right? So they just took it off the market. It was $114,000 in the fall when we had looked at it. This time I'm talking to the guy, and I said, I knew how much it was. But I said, and how much was that property again? And he's like, how about $78,000? And I said, oh, man, do you think you could negotiate? And he's like, fine, $72,000. I said, okay, we'll take it. So we drove back to Ted and Irene's. It was too winter, and we couldn't even get up to the property.
Yeah, there was still a lot of snow up there. And so Ted and Irene put up with this for a while more. And really, these people are almost saints, I tell you. Well, they are saints. Never mind, almost. But anyways, they put up with us for till May, and in May we were able to get up to the property. So we found a wall tent, and I bought some lumber from Tuesday Old School out on the reserve there, because it was a really excellent price. At that time, it was a buck a board foot. So it was about half the cost of what it was in the store. So we built a platform, put our wall tent on it, and that's where we started our journey of building our place. And it has been as much work as I expected. Yes, indeed. So, through this all, because we stood up for the Lord and did whatever it took, He stood up for us. And I would just encourage every single one of you to trust the Lord more than you do. Be careful what you ask of Him, though, because you just might get it. And it might be pretty tough. But I'll tell you what, I can tell you this. From me, I can tell you for a fact that if He asks you to do something, He will provide the way to do it. Without question, He will provide the way. He's the one that's asking you to do it. He's not asking you to make the way. He just wants you to go where He leads you. Just like Abraham. He told Abraham, get out of the city and go where I will show you. Abraham didn't know where he was going, but God eventually showed him. And so, whether it's involving yourself in a ministry, or maybe God has put it on your heart to get out of the cities, for those that are listening online or here, highly recommend that idea, because the blessings, even though it's a ton of work to get something established, unless you want to pay a lot more money for a turnkey operation, to establish something from raw is a lot of work. But God will provide the energy and the means to do it. It may not happen very quickly, but if He's asking you to make that move, and God has told us to make that move through spirit of prophecy, do it. Don't be afraid. He'll help you in whatever way He needs to help you to get you where you need to be. So, yeah.
When God has asked us to do ministry as well, it's the same thing.
Absolutely.
If God puts it on your heart, He will make it happen. We don't have to fight for it. We don't have to. God is going to make it happen, and He's going to put trials. Not Him. Satan is going to step in our way. He's going to put up roadblocks. He's going to make trials. He's going to try to discourage you. But if God has asked us something, and open your Bibles, study your spirit of prophecy. If God has asked something of us, no matter what it is, He will open the doors. I want to read something. Are we ready?
Yeah, go ahead.
I want to read something that we were just reading together this morning. It's from Sons and Daughters of God. And it says, "And because iniquity shall abound, the love of many shall wax cold. But he that shall endure to the end, the same shall be saved. And because iniquity shall abound, the love of many shall wax cold. The very atmosphere is polluted with sin. Soon God's people will be tested by fiery trials, and the great proportion of those who now appear to be genuine and true will prove to be base metal. Instead of being strengthened and confirmed by opposition, threats, and abuse, they will cowardly take the side of the opposers. The promise is, them that honor me, I will honor. Already the judgments of God are abroad in the land, as seen in storms, in floods, in tempests, in earthquakes, in peril by land and by sea. The great I Am is speaking to those who make void His law. When God's wrath is poured out upon the earth, who will then be able to stand? Now is the time for God's people to show themselves true to principle. When the religion of Christ is most held in contempt, when his law is most despised, then should our zeal be the warmest and our courage and firmness the most unflinching, to stand in the defense of truth and righteousness when the majority forsake us, to fight the battles of the Lord when champions are few. This is our test. At this time, we must gather warmth from the coldness of others, courage from their cowardice, and loyalty from their treason. The captain of our strength will strengthen his people for the conflict in which they must engage. Now is the time when we should closely connect with God, that we may be hid when the fierceness of his wrath is poured upon the sons of men. All who will gather warmth from the coldness of others, courage from their defections, and loyalty from their treason will triumph with the third angel's message.
At this time, we'll have our closing song. I don't have the paper in front of me. I'm not sure which song it is. 545?